I decided to set up this scholarship in memory of my husband and also my parents. All of them have... My husband passed away 3 years ago, my mother shortly afterwards, and my father some time ago. But I felt that there was something that I wanted to give that would be in their names and would be perhaps in perpetuity in their names. It was perhaps for all three of them that all three of them had different experiences of needing or getting support to come to university. If I take first my father's father was killed in the First World War in the Battle of the Somme. My father hadn't insufficient funds to complete his degree at the University of Bristol. My mother was one of few people who would have matriculated, women who of her generation would have matriculated, but was unable or decided not to take up the offer of a university place because she felt it would put too great a burden on her then elderly parents. So she did not fulfil her potential. My husband, on the other hand, did. He came from a very poor background. Can't afford it Crescent in Grimsby, large family. His mother hadn't got a job. He was born in a prefab built after the war, lived in a council estate. But he was a very scholarly child. He was enabled through grammar schools, through scholarship systems, to go to the University of Oxford. And subsequently, when we married, he joined me in Leeds. So it was, I think, this feeling that you can actually move out of if you like, a more deprived area, a more deprived home, and you can move on. And it is very interesting that this has actually transferred itself through the generations. So while my husband Ray came from a generation where nobody in his family went to university, then his brother, then both his daughters, then his nephew, then his nieces, etc. So the whole family has actually been moved up, if you like. We've got social mobility, and I'm a big believer in the role of universities and higher education in general in creating social mobility. I met my scholar at Christmas time, and I've put her in touch with my children, but via Facebook. I didn't think perhaps I wanted to know all the secrets of Facebook, but I thought my children being roughly the same age, and I was really pleased. Jenny, the scholar, it turned out that we had a lot in common. She too comes from the northwest, which is where I live now, in Chester. She too was studying history and English, and we discovered that there were lots more coincidences as well. She particularly loved Rome. She'd just been on a trip to Rome, and my husband and I were absolutely wowed by Rome. It was fantastic. And I also discovered that she was wishing perhaps eventually to become a librarian, which was my husband's profession. He was in the management team of Cheshire Library Arts and Museums, and those coincidences were really nice to know about, and to think that, you know, it was encouraging somebody who shared my husband's and what would have been my parents' interests in the world around. To give to Leeds is really, it's a question of giving back something, I think. We in the 60s were very privileged, because even if we came from poorish backgrounds, and albeit my parents were teachers, we were not well off, we were fortunate we had a very, very full grant. Times have changed, and I think in a way it's a question of giving back that opportunity that we had to break out from rather narrow backgrounds, whether they were narrow because you lived in the country, whether they were narrow because of financial constraints, or whether they were narrow simply because there is no possibility of expanding your horizons in the same way as a university can. There's no other way of doing it, and I think that's the important thing for me. If another alumnus was thinking of giving to Leeds, I think I would go back to my previous reflections on the way we had it so good in the 60s, and perhaps in the 50s, but certainly in the 60s, and in subsequent generations, that we had very good financial support. It allowed us to go beyond our horizons, to be beyond the limited boundaries of our lives. And I would say that it would be nice to give something that will enable future generations to have that experience.